This is a common sight. Steering wheel slightly off center. The car itself still drives straight, but the steering wheel kind of sits like this. So there's a couple different scenarios. One is this, where the car wants to, if you let go of the wheel, the car will still go straight. That's fine. Second scenario is, let's say you replace the steering rack or took off the steering wheel shaft and the car drives straight, but the wheel is like this. Okay, that's also fine. So this one, if you're case B here, all you need to do is essentially jack up the car with the wheel like this. You're going to remove the single bolt that holds the steering shaft to the steering rack, and then remove that shaft, come back in the car, straighten the wheel out, put the shaft back on. Now, that is not going to get you center. That's going to get you maybe here, maybe there. But if you're at this point and you try to adjust the shaft again, you're going to end up here, because that's the level of granularity that the steering shaft has, steering shaft adjustment. You don't want to take the wheel off and put the wheel on again. You want to make sure that the wheels and the shaft and the steering rack are essentially as straight as they can be, and then you line up the shaft with the rack, if that makes sense. Because if you take the wheel off here, put it back on straight, well, then the wheel is not meant to be moved, essentially, because of the clock spring inside, everything else. At some point, the wheel was here. I mean, this is kind of your center, and then it somehow got here. Like, the wheel didn't take itself off and put itself on again here. You did something externally, or something externally happened with the car, the steering shaft, to get it here. The wheel was never off, so we're not taking the wheel off. So in my case, this is kind of just where it is after all these years. The toe adjustment, the tie rod ends, whatever suspension, control arm bushings I replaced, all that at some point in alignment was done with bad components, which got it straight with the bad components, but then we put on good components and we're a little off. So this is what we're working with here. This is what we're looking at. The other scenario is if the wheel is straight or not straight and you let go and the car tracks, the car wants to shoot left or right. That's a more serious issue than what we're talking about here. It's still probably an alignment issue. It could be a mechanical issue. It could be tires, wheels, etc. But we're going to start with the most basic thing first. So if you follow this guide to get all this straight, your problem of letting go of the wheel and the car wants to go a different direction might be solved. So this video, start here, because you want to start in little steps and do little things first before getting crazy. So I have to loosen the tie rod end nuts because they're on extremely tight. Don't know when they're off, when they've been taken off, if ever. So yeah, we're just going to keep in mind that the wheel was here, slightly to the left. Not really relevant, but we're just going to keep it there for now. Then we're going to secure the wheel at some point with, you can use a seat belt or they make a tool to hold the wheel straight. But we'll get into that in a second. So next we're going to look underneath and see what we have to loosen. Okay, so here's our steering rack. We just saw this in the last video with the engine mounts. Here's your tie rod end here. And the adjustment point we need to make is this nut. So we got to loosen this nut. And then once we do that, we're going to be clamping on or using a wrench on this inner shaft and turning it either clockwise or counterclockwise to move the wheel, move the front of the wheel out or in. So might need some heat on here, might need to wire brush this a little bit, clear these threads off because they're pretty I mean, it is what it is. They're not stripped or anything, but they've just been on there a while. Now, obviously if you're replacing your outer tie rods, you're going to have to do an alignment, so this video would apply as well. And then in order to check if these outer tie rods are bad, you want to grasp the wheel at the 9 and 3 o'clock position and kind of wiggle it back and forth. And if there's any play or movement, it's going to tell you this joint is bad, this ball joint right here on the tie rod end. If you grab the top of the wheel and the bottom, 6 and 12 o'clock, and shake it, if you have any movement in there, then their center bearing, wheel bearing's bad. So left and right is tie rod, up and down is generally wheel bearing. So this car is nice because the steering rack is in front. I can easily adjust this when the car is on the ground, which is going to help us with our jack stands and string. Other cars are in the back, which is a little bit tighter because you have to reach around the back side of the wheel. But I'm going to get these loose, both sides, and then we're going to start our measurements and adjustments. Okay, a little bit map gas, and you can see this nut is loose. And then the shaft we're going to be adjusting is the inner tie rod right here. Obviously the outer can't move because it's bolted to the knuckle. So we'll leave this nut loose. We don't know how much adjustment we're going to need, so we're just going to back it out all the way for now. And lower the car down, settle the suspension, and then take our measurements. Alright, we got all our measurements done. Now you're probably wondering how you set this all up and how string is more accurate than lasers, etc. Well, math is math. Whether it's a string measuring it or a laser, obviously there's less accuracy using a ruler tape measure than there are lasers, but this will get you so close you won't even need an alignment. So what you need to do is set up the string so it's at relatively the same height as the center bore, and you can pick any number here. I picked 5 inches because 10 is a little bit too far, and then anywhere closer is just kind of pushing it. So you're going to measure 5 inches out from the center line, front wheel, rear wheel. Now that is basically making sure this string is equal distance from the center of the front and the rear. Then we're going to measure from the rear wheel, rear of the front wheel, and then take our measurement here, and then same with the front of the wheel, take our measurement right there on all 4 corners. So here's my measurements. So left front, 5 3/8 plus means like an 1/8 inch over or so, and then 5 3/8 in the back. So this is pretty close. We're just going to have to try pushing the front in a little bit. And then the rears, 5 1/2, so they're both about 1/2 inch out, which is equal on both sides. The right rear was like an 1/8 inch forward, toe out a little bit, but I mean that's so minute, it's not going to affect anything. And then I don't know, usually 99% of the time when you're doing alignment, you're just aligning the front. I know shops say 4-wheel alignment. A lot of cars don't even have rear toe adjustments or camber or anything else. Some do, some don't. But typically you're not looking at the rear. And then the right front. So here, this is a little bit more out. We have the front of the wheel 5 5/8, and then the rear is 5 1/2. So we're going to want to bring this right front wheel in, and we want these both to be as close to 5 3/8 or wherever it kind of aligns equally front and back. So this wheel's going to have to come in a little bit, and then this one 3/8, we want to basically the same thing. We want to toe it in a little bit more. Doing this is going to make the car track straight and the wheel straight because we've locked the wheel straight already. So right now the wheel is perfectly straight, and then this verifies that the alignment is off, which is why the steering wheel sits a little bit crooked when the car is going straight. So that's pretty much it. All we need to do, like I said, is adjust the tie rods to either pull the wheel, like I said, pull the wheel in, redo the measurements, and make sure we're within 1/8 of an inch or so, or equal is even better, obviously, 0 toe. And that's it. So if you have any questions, let me know. But fairly straightforward, and math is math. That's all I gotta say. 1/8 of an inch, also accuracy, plus or minus 1/8 of an inch, you're not gonna notice it. The car's not gonna notice it, and the tires are not gonna notice it. So hate all you want with your laser alignments and alignment racks, but if you want to get close as possible with a piece of string, this is what you gotta do. Alright, we've got everything adjusted. I was a little off on some of my original measurements. What I meant to say is 1/16 of an inch you're not going to notice, not 1/8. And then left rear was 5.5, so 0 toe back here. Right rear, same thing, 5.5 plus a 1/16, not 1/8. So this one is a little off in the right rear. Left front was 5 5/8 and then 5 3/8. And then the right front was again 5 5/8 and then 5.5. So we made our adjustments, and we are at 5.5 plus a 1/16 in the left front wheel. 5.5 plus 1 1/16 in the back of the wheel. Right front 5.5, 5.5, 0 toe, 0 toe. Left rear 5 5/8 minus a 1/16 of an inch. Same here. Then right rear is a little bit off. We're at 5 5/8 minus a 1/16 after that, and then 5.5 plus another 1/16. So this is a little bit off, 1 or 2 1/16. Not too concerned, but the front wheels are perfect, 0 toe. And then our steering wheel, we made sure to keep that centered and straight. Just check it as you're adjusting. And then again, 5 inches to the front and rear wheel. And then we've got 5.5, and then a 1/16. 5.5 and a 1/16. We're good there. The only other thing is when you're doing your adjustments, you might have a tendency to also turn the outer tie rod a little bit when you're tightening or loosening. Say within you're tightening the nut, it's going to turn it a little bit. So make sure the outer tie rod is centered and you're holding it, and then when you're tightening the nut, you're not turning the inner tie rod at all, because that's going to change your toe again by a 1/16 of an inch or so. So that's it. We're going to tighten up the nuts and then make sure that outer tie rod is centered, because it does have some play forward and back. Just make sure it's centered when everything's tight. And that's it. You're done.